welcome to Festival of the Girl and happy International Day of the Girl. I'm Laura, the co-founder of the festival, and I'm here with Bella to talk all things conservation. Hi, Bella.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we're so delighted you're here. Now, I've got lots of great questions to ask you, but first of all, do you want to just tell us a little bit more about your passion and what you do?
So I'm a young environmental activist or youth conservationist, and essentially what I do is try to inform people about the environmental crisis and try and inspire them to take action.
And what have you been doing recently? What are the current projects that you're working on at the moment?
So at the moment I'm working on a few things. One of them is an organisation called Reserva, which is a completely youth-driven organisation. And at the moment we're working on trying to protect an area of land of rainforest in Ecuador. So all the work, all the fundraising is done by people under 25 for that. Another thing is I'm working on a short film called Losing Wild, because I'm sure many of the young people here will agree that, you know, our generation haven't been given as much opportunity as previous generations to connect with the natural world. And there was actually this report by National Trust which said 75% of young people spend less time outside than prison inmates. So it's shocking, but, you know, I think we can change. And I think if young people are going to have the love and admiration for nature, then we have to change that. So this is exploring that, and then off the back of that, we'll launch a campaign trying to get the government and trying to get parents and schools make nature more accessible for young people, especially in cities.
Absolutely. And with everything that you've done, what's your biggest achievement, I suppose, to date with your conservation work?
I would say, well, there are two answers. I think, firstly, because the environmental movement is sort of decentralized, meaning there's no leader and we do everything as a community. In a way, the main achievement isn't personal, it's collective. And when I look back at how much progress there has been in the last year, you know, that we haven't had enough action yet by governments or even by individuals, but there has been progress. And I think that's one of the greatest achievements, the way that young people have come together in an incredible way, especially for the youth strikes for the climate. And that's the main achievement of the movement. I would say personally, it was for me making a documentary which I made just before the pandemic hit. And you know, we were going around to meet lots of people on the front lines, whether it was economists or philosophers or farmers or activists who we believe have the solution to the sixth mass extinction. And I think that was an achievement because so much of my time before was spent on fighting against the system, railing against the system. And it's important also to imagine the future and, rather than be overwhelmed by the challenges, actually focus on the creativity and focus on the solutions which already exist. So that was powerful because it was like a change in mindset for me.
It's amazing. And you've done so much. How and when did you get started? At what age did you learn about conservation and environment? And you know, what did you do those first few steps?
So I've always been in love with the natural world. When I was very young, I don't know, be in the garden looking at insects or snails, for example. But when I was about 11, that love and passion translated more into a concern when I watched a video about palm oil and the effects on orangutans. And my mum thinks it's because I look a bit like an orangutan that I love them so much. So then I learned about how deforestation is connected to the climate crisis and to the extinction crisis. So I went on social media, I began to speak about it on there, I gave a speech at school. And from there, when you're on social media, you learn so much, and it sort of snowballed. As I learned and I began to try and inform others, I learned more myself. And it all began just from watching that one video. And before that, I hadn't really known much except perhaps seeing the WWF campaigns or maybe watching a David Attenborough documentary. So I would say to young people, you know, maybe you don't feel like you know enough or you don't feel like it's your place to speak up, but you can, and it doesn't have to come from school. You can educate yourself with resources outside of school.
Absolutely. And we kind of we talk about school. Was your school really receptive to you wanting to kind of, you know, speak in a group? And for girls out there that might want to do that, you know, how did your school react, and did they help you, you know, with those, you know, that first talk?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they were actually much more willing to allow me to speak than I thought, because they recognize the importance of the issue, and many other young people um, since then in my school have been taking action. And I think at the beginning you can feel like, I'll be alone in speaking out about this, which is how I felt. But then what you realize is that actually loads of other people feel the same way, and perhaps that's why they're not taking action. So when you do speak out, then you'll find this community, and it will sort of increase the impact.
I think that's really important, isn't it? Kind of finding that group. You know, you're an individual wanting to do something, but then you'll find a group, and you can be really powerful, kind of as a group of people. Yeah, that's interesting. And how did you balance? Obviously, you've got lots of work with your conservation. How do you balance the studying and the conservation work?
Yeah, so before I did my GCSEs last year, and often um, I was busy doing panels or protests, and even the night before my English GCSE, I was actually out quite late doing something. So I wasn't that good at that time. But my biggest advice would be, recognize that you don't have to pour everything into campaigning or activism or um, speaking out. You have to realize that you can sometimes take a step back, because there are lots of voices and they will come and fill that space, but you can always go back. So use your time and energy wisely, and don't actually, one thing I did learn is that lots of what you learn outside of school, when you're doing the campaigning or activism, will help you in school, because it gives you the context, and it helps you sort of put that knowledge into action in the real world. So maybe it will help you with geography or biology, but you'll probably find that you actually have to work a little bit less, because you're learning a lot more outside of school as well.
Absolutely. And I think you kind of something that I know that you're doing at the moment is what you focus on in the documentary. It's all about like hope, where you kind of feel that people you maybe have changed, you know, from feeling quite angry to quite hopeful, and I think that's really interesting. So you're kind of, do you feel you kind of want to offer, I suppose, a message of hope to the girls when it comes to kind of what you've been working on recently?
Yeah, so I think we can be overwhelmed by the complexity of the problem and how big of a challenge it is. But we can also fall in love with the creativity of the solutions, with how many solutions there are. And one thing is, the future that we're striving for is not all about sacrifices. Environmentalism isn't all about giving up cars and giving up meat and giving up plastic. It's also about looking forward to this future where we have more wildlife in cities, where we have cleaner cities, where you can actually see the stars, more locally grown organic food. And that's a future which is really exciting, which we should look forward to. So don't feel, lots of young people have felt eco-anxiety, which is sort of just being overwhelmed by what we have to do. But you can also remember that feeling of being overwhelmed, try and translate it into hope, try and translate it into action as well, rather than becoming apathetic.
Absolutely. And kind of talking about what you can do, what would be three simple steps that our girls could kind of do from listening to you today, that they could kind of immediately kind of put into their you know, their daily life?
So one thing we've touched on quite a bit, but I would say speak up, use your voice, recognize that your voice has lots of power, because as a young person, you have a stake in the future of our planet. So, you should be in those spaces, you should be being listened to. And another thing I would say is find a community. Individual action is incredibly important, but it's when those actions accumulate and have an impact on whether it's politics or the economy or companies, that's when real change will happen. And another thing I would say is, make some changes in your own life to try and be more ethical and more sustainable. So you can reduce your consumption of animal products, give up single-use plastics as well, fly less, obviously. So there are many, many things you can do, but I think those are the three main ones I recommend.
And kind of, I mean, everything you've done, even with your conservation work, you know, as a young person, you've been in an adult world, you've had to speak in front of lots of people. Do you have like general advice for girls, just about, you know, just I suppose if they had to present themselves into a big room, or you know, kind of about confidence, or anything you've learnt on the way with all your conservation work?
I think take advantage of the opportunities you have. Um, and I am, you know, I'm not that loud in real life, but I've done some speeches, and I think when you have a passion for something, and when you realize the importance of your voice and the importance of your message, it becomes much easier to speak in those spaces. Um, so if you are not comfortable with public speaking, or if you're not comfortable with protesting, you know, you don't have to conform to this image of an activist. You can always bring change into your own life. So whether it's through music, or whether it's through, I don't know, cooking, you can always reach out to people, spread messages in different ways. You could, if it is cooking, for example, learn about plant-based cooking, maybe give lessons to your friends, and yeah, so bring change into your own life rather than trying to conform to this image of what an activist is, which people tell us.
I think that's really important. I think also kind of, you know, you've learned just that you're actually really important, aren't you, as a young person, to not feel that you should be quieter or anything, you know, because you're younger, that actually you have a voice. And do you feel like that you've had to learn to kind of, you know, that you are important with what you're saying, doesn't matter what your age is? um
Definitely, even now, you know, there are still comments if I do something, and with the media, people still say things like, um, you know, you're younger, why should we listen to you? And I think the answer is, I'm not here um, giving this making. I'm not here making up solutions. I'm relating the science, which has already been said by many scientists, and I'm, you know, conveying the solutions which many activists, many scientists, campaigners, philosophers, many people have said before. And also, as I said before, young people have a great stake in the future, and I think we are the ones inheriting this planet. So, you know, we should have a say in what happens. We should have a say in creating this future which we're going to be inhabiting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've kind of mentioned a few organisations. Where can the girls go to kind of learn more? You know, where can they go online to kind of read more about environmental change?
So these are a few. You can go to Extinction Rebellion Youth, which is much more about campaigning, protesting. You can join Reserva Youth Land Trust, which is the organisation I work with, where we try and fund areas of land, try and protect nature. You can also join Fridays for Future, the Youth Strikes for Climate, which you've probably heard of. And lots of organisations at the moment are looking for young voices to join them, whether it's through advisory councils or just through discussing and looking at their work. So I know that RSPB and National Trust are doing this. So if you just go onto their websites and contact them, I'm sure they'd love to hear from you.
Amazing. And if the girls wanted to follow what you're doing and keep up with all your amazing work, where can they follow you?
You can just follow me on Bella Lack on either Instagram or Twitter, or Facebook, but I'm not that active on Facebook.
Okay. And when it comes to these amazing documentaries that you mentioned at the beginning, when are they out? When should we look out for those?
The short one I'm making will be out in a few months, and the longer one, which I made last year, will be out in March, on the 21st of March.
Amazing. And our final question is, we say the Festival of the Girl, the future is hers. What's your, I suppose, biggest wish for your future self, I suppose, when it comes to your conservation work?
So the interesting thing is, I've been asked this question before, and I think in my lifetime we're not going to see a perfect world. And you know, the world will never be perfect, actually. But what we can see is a huge progression in what we value and how we value nature. And I hope that when we're all adults, we can look back to this time and think, I can't believe that's how much we used to pollute, or I can't believe that's how much rainforest we used to cut down, or how many animals we used to make go extinct. Because if we look back and we're shocked by how we live now, then that's because we'll be living in a much more sustainable, ethical world where we value nature and where we realize that as humans, we're not above other species, and we actually rely on the natural world for our own survival.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bella, for your time. I think you've inspired lots of girls kind of to get going with their own work. If you do want to take some action, please let us know what you're doing by the website, and we'll share those with Bella if you've been inspired. And yeah, have a great day, Bella, and thank you again for joining us at Festival of the
Thank
Girl.
you so much for having me.